So we've talked about the Constitution, why that's so important. We've talked about government, what it is. And now we're going to talk about 4 principles regarding power specifically. Since government is power, let's talk about some principles surrounding that. Okay, and some of those that show up. One of the very first principles is this idea of delegated powers. Okay? In America, who's in charge? We the people, right? The very first words there of the preamble to the Constitution. We the people are in charge. And we the people are the ones who have rights. God gives rights to who? To people, but not just collective people, to individuals. And when I have a right from God, I have an accompanying duty, power, and authority that comes with that right. And so as I as an individual can do certain things, and I can delegate, give the power and authority associated with that right to government to act on my behalf, because they become my agent. They can act for me. But can I give to them powers I myself don't have? No, you can't do that. You cannot delegate to someone a power that you yourself don't have. And that's an important concept to understand. Okay? Washington puts it this way. The power under the Constitution will always be in the people. Right? The people are in charge. It's entrusted for certain defined purposes and for a certain limited period to representatives of their own choosing. Okay? That's America. That makes sense. That's what we do. We have people work for us. We assign them to do things that we could do, but don't. Let them do it, okay? The Declaration of Independence, the very next phrase, when we left off from our earlier conversation, the next phrase is deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Kind of an interesting concept. This idea that government only has just powers if we ourselves first have those powers and then consent to give them to them. Do I have the inalienable right to defend myself, to defend my property? You bet. It's God-given and I can do that. So, can I give to the county sheriff the ability to protect and defend me? Yeah. I can delegate to him that power and authority. Okay? Does he have the right? Does any government have that right? No, they don't have the right. The right remains with me. But I've delegated to them the power to do that. But do I have the right to say, hey, you have 5 horses and you only have 1. Stop being so greedy. Give 2 of them to this person and you'll both have 3. And if you don't do that, I'm going to throw you in jail. Because you're being greedy. Do I have that right as an individual to do that? No. And therefore I can't delegate that power to the government to do that on my behalf, to act as my agent. That's not within their proper authority because I can't delegate to them a power I don't have. Deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. The basic concept is absolutely powerful. Very, very important to understand that basic principle of delegated powers. Okay? Number 2 is limited powers. All right? There's 2 quotes here that we're going to use quite a bit to discuss this. The first quote is James Madison, comes out of the Federalist Papers, number 45. He says, the powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Okay? Jefferson follows up with this. To take a single step beyond the boundaries thus specially drawn around the powers of Congress is to take possession of a boundless field of power, no longer susceptible of any definition. So, when we limit the power, that's what the Constitution is all about, is limiting power. So we limit that. So here's your limit. Jefferson says, when they justify taking 1 step out of that limitation, out of those boundaries, it's completely obliterated. They can do whatever they want to. How does he put it? No longer susceptible of any definition. Because the same justification and rationalization to take 1 step is the same one to take 1,000,000 steps outside. When you leave the corral gate open, the cows go out, don't they? Okay? So this idea of a limitation of powers, because our government is based on limited powers, not unlimited. Okay? Now, principle number 3, separation of powers. We all know there are 3 different branches of government, right? Legislative, executive, and judicial. Those are 3 basic governmental branches. And we've heard before that those are separate but equal. Have you heard that? Okay, they all balance each other, so they must be equal, of course. Well, let's explore that a little bit. I'm going to ask you 5 different questions, okay? And we'll try to see if they really are equal. Which branch has the power to make all laws? Legislator, right? Article 1, Section 1, Clause 1. Congress is the only one who can make laws. Which branch is closest to the people and is elected directly by them? Congress, specifically the House. They're the most closely tied to the people. Which branch has the greatest number of persons, representative viewpoints, and therefore the will of the people represented? The legislature, once again. Which branch has the power over the purse, is in charge of all the money? The legislature, Congress. The House specifically in this case. And then which branch has the power to impeach members of the other branches? Once again, Congress. So, Are they separate but equal, or is one stronger than the other two? The legislative is stronger. It's obvious with their powers, right? The legislative is stronger than the other branches. On a side note, Article 1 of the Constitution is written about the congressional, the legislative branch. It's about half of the volume of the Constitution, another indication that maybe it is the most powerful branch. Why would that be? Why would the legislative have these kind of superpowers? Why would it be? Because Congress represents who? Us, the people. And who's in charge? We, the people, are in charge. So it only makes sense that they would be in charge, because then there is a proper republic, a representative government. They answer to us, they're accountable to us, they do what we tell them to do. Otherwise, we fire them and hire someone else to represent us. See how that works? So it makes sense. They're not separate but equal. Okay? Now, the accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary in the same hands, whether of one, a few, or many, may justly be pronounced the very definition of OSHA. Okay? People always finish that, say tyranny. Well, it's OSHA. Okay? I'll give you an example why. I was in human resources for 10 years. In my company, an OSHA officer showed up one day and said, "We're going to charge you $27,000. I said, "Wow, why?" So we didn't have this little guard. And I guess somewhere in some lab, this little guard could have hurt someone. But I'm telling you, I could have put my finger there all day long and it never would have hurt me. But they have their standards, right? So they're going to charge me $27,000. So, I kind of tiptoed around things a little bit and said, now, what if I, let's say theoretically I don't agree with your judgment. He said, "Oh yeah, you can go to a judge." "Oh, good. Yeah, and you can go to court." "Well, perfect. Just tell me a little bit more about that." "Well, it's an OSHA judge and it's an OSHA court." I said, "Oh, well, I don't need to waste my time. Here's your check, Come on, give me a break." So what happens? OSHA makes the law, OSHA enforces the law, and or OSHA judges whether the law is fair or not. All three functions of government, the very definition of tyranny, isn't it? Yeah, interesting. Okay, going on with this quote, "The preservation of liberty requires that the three great departments of power should be separate and equal? No, separate and distinct." The separation of powers. I always like the separation of powers is kind of the horizontal check and balance. Okay? You're looking to the side, checking legislative, executive, judicial. The fourth principle we're going to talk about is this idea of division of powers. And division of powers is a vertical check and balance. It's something a lot of people don't like to talk about because it kind of sounds extreme. Well, what do you mean? The states are going to tell the federal government what to do? They can't do that. They're subservient. They're servants of the federal government. We're going to talk a little bit more about division of powers because it's a critical principle as well. The fourth principle we're going to talk about. We've already seen the first part of this quote. "The powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined." Few and defined kind of looks like this. It starts here and ends here, and there's not much in between. Okay? Go on with this quote. It says, "Those who should remain in the state governments are numerous and indefinite." Okay? So few and defined looks like this. Numerous and indefinite looks like this, doesn't it? Okay? The former, meaning the federal powers, will be exercised principally on external objects. Okay? All the external things we do as a nation, such as war, peace, negotiation, foreign commerce. On the other hand, the powers reserved to the several states will extend to all the objects which, in the ordinary course of affairs, concern the lives, liberties, and properties of the people, and the internal order, improvement, and prosperity of the state. Okay? So this division of powers is based on the concept of federalism. Federalism says you have different roles for different levels of government. Federal government's in charge of the external things. Then you have the state, and you have the county, and you have the cities. And the basic concept, the basic principle behind federalism is always solve the problem at the lowest level possible. Don't ever delegate to a higher level of government that which you can do on your own. Okay? Don't ever delegate to a higher and higher level. Always keep it at the lowest level possible to keep the power with the people. Okay? That's the division of powers, is based on that concept.